Hello, my name is Kai, and I am a bit of a rambler. And today is the first episode of Ramble On, the companion podcast to Bit of a Rambler, because I have a lot of stuff to talk about, clearly, and I didn't realize how many main episodes I would have, right off the bat. But I still want to talk about everyday things going on. So this companion podcast, will be a little more meta, talking about the podcast itself and just what's been going on in my life while I hang out, traveling around, living a pretty laid-back life. So I might talk about movies I watched or books or really just what's been going on this week, because I always have stuff to talk about, but not everything is going to fit into the main curated topics that I have all set up and scheduled to go, and I have a lot of those. So yeah, I think I'm going to add this companion podcast on and release it on Saturdays. It might not be as long or as focused as... Actually, I can guarantee it's not going to be as focused as the main episodes. But that way, if I have anything going on through the week, I can just talk about it here. You can hear more of the everyday life of traveling. And if there's anything going on with the podcast, or if anybody writes in, I can address that here also in one central place instead of the various social medias and email places I have to deal with. Which brings me to my first order of business, because bit of a rambler, this podcast is the #1 travel podcast in Guatemala, according to podstatus.com, which I guess is one of the sites that track podcast listening, who took the time to reach out and tell me about my #1 Guatemalan travel podcast status. That means there's no other travel podcast in Guatemala, I'm assuming. I'm also number 15 in Travel and Society, so there are probably about 14 other podcasts in Guatemala about travel and society. But while I'm here, I have to thank the Guatemalans who have rated this podcast, because I do have some ratings on a few platforms, and I don't know if I'll ever get to say this again. So right now I'm the #1 podcast in the country. Perks of doing a travel podcast and traveling to a bunch of countries that may not be as hip to podcasts as other countries. I'm #1 in the country in travel podcasts. That was really funny to receive that email. And moving on, I'm pretty comfortable with speaking Mandarin Chinese, and I'm learning Spanish back, but every time I can't think of the correct word in a Spanish phrase, I use the Mandarin phrase instead. And to say yes in Mandarin, you say, "dui dui," which is like, yeah, yeah. And I do that a lot. Or ta is he or she, ta. So instead of el or ella, I'll say ta quiero, which is the Chinese he, and then the Spanish wants, or, quiera, quiere. Jeez, I don't know the conjugation still. Anyway, it's funny because I'm still doing that over 2 months into speaking Spanish. Often because I'll be walking along listening to a podcast or something on my headphones in English, and then someone will talk to me and I'll have to talk to them in Spanish, but my brain is so comfortable with Mandarin, and it's like, well, that's the foreign language you speak, so it'll try to substitute in Mandarin words for the Spanish words I don't know, even though it's still thinking about the English words from the podcast I'm listening to. It's not a huge issue, and people always understand me. It's just funny because I noticed I substitute in small Chinese words here and there. But it's also interesting because people generally know what I'm saying anyway, so context is pretty big when you're speaking abroad. I've been watching Letterkenny too, this TV show about redneck Canadians, and I think I'm picking up the redneck hick accent that they make fun of in the show and everybody talks in. And I don't even know if that's a real accent. I'm sure it is, but I don't know if the accent they're doing on the show is real. But I feel like that's taking over my native English-speaking voice, and I have to consciously remember not to sound like Wayne all the time. But I do find their jokes and puns and rapid-fire talk so much fun. There's a group of kids that play soccer in my neighborhood all the time. If you wonder if I'm just going to keep switching topics, the answer is yes. I'm just going to keep talking about whatever happened this week. And I bought a pizza, and on the way back, one of those kids who sees me every day ran up to me to get me up a hill and asked for a slice of pizza. And I was like, ooh, I want to give you a slice of pizza, but then I have to give everybody a slice of pizza. And it was just him, nobody was around. And I guess he was like 14 or 15, not really a kid, but I said, no, this is my dinner, and so I'm going to take it home. He was like, okay. And I felt kind of bad that I didn't give him a slice. But then on the way home, carrying a pizza box in my neighborhood, 6 other kids asked for a slice of pizza. And I was like, okay, it was a good idea. Because if I gave one to him, he definitely would have told all the other kids that asked were the regular soccer kids, like that hang out in that spot I see everybody every day. So if I had given Johan a piece, I would have had to give pizza to all the kids. And then I'd just become this pizza giver. And that's a rough reputation when you're living in a country with less income and they already think you're rich just because of you don't look like them or they know you're from a wealthier country. If I started giving out food, that trend would not end. I've been rewatching Kino no Tabi, Kino's Journey, this fantastic anime about traveling, and listening to Kino talk about traveling is really funny because it reflects so many of the platitudes and general ideas I have about traveling. And when Kino says something, I often remember saying a similar thing to people who ask about travel or people who ask me what I think about travel. So it's really great watching the TV show. It's a fantastic show anyway. But the philosophy within regarding traveling and general life philosophy is also very comforting to listen to. And it's a very slow-paced show, so it's really easy to sink back into. I'm really liking watching it again. And then someone else who likes the show just told me that it started as a light novel, which I've never read before, and I never knew what it was before. But apparently light novels are just like YA novels, like slightly less difficult than adult novels that are popular in Japan. So I got the series of Kino no Tabi light novels, and I've started reading those. But they have some of the same stories as the show, so I want to finish the show first and then read all of them. But those light novels, there's 18 of them now, they're still ongoing, and the original writer is still writing those novels. 25 years later, a quarter century on, the same series with the same author is ongoing, which is great because I read a couple from the first volume, and that travel philosophy vibe is still winding its way through the whole written prose. So I'm pretty excited to get into those. I just want to reiterate here, although I think I did mention it in the Guatemala podcast. Who knows when that's going to come out. How much I like saying buenas noches, buenas tardes, and buenos dias every time I walk by someone in the neighborhood here. Everybody is so polite here. And it's funny because they recently cleaned up the crime in this neighborhood. All the people I meet here tell me yeah, this place is dangerous. I got mugged here many times. More than one person has told me that about the neighborhood I'm living in now. But there are police stations and kiosks every, couple hundred yards or maybe half a kilometer here. They're pretty close by though. There are several right in the neighborhood I'm at, and everybody is very relaxed here. Like I said, the kids play soccer in the street. People walk with their parents or just their siblings around the streets without hurrying from one door to the next or anything like that. So it feels like a very safe little community. And whenever I see someone in this neighborhood, they all know who I am now because I've been living in the same place for a couple months. And they always wave and say, buenos dias or buenas tardes, buenas noches. And it's nice to have that small community feel where everyone is comfortable and polite enough with their neighbors that we greet each other whenever we see each other. It's fun. I like doing that. I still have not gotten to Quetzaltenango. I have it in my head that I'm supposed to go there. Maybe it's just the name that's really cool. Quetzaltenango. They call it Xela here. And I can take a bus over there pretty much any time of the day. There's a bus running 8 times a day from each company that goes straight to Shella. So I think I am going to go. I have 2 weeks left in this apartment, and then I have to figure out if I'm going to leave the country or do something else. And for some reason, I keep thinking about Quetzaltenango. So I think when my time in this apartment is up, I'm going to just jump on a bus, go over to Quetzaltenango, see how I feel about it, stay if I like it, and then if not, get a bus back here and fly out to somewhere else. But I mean, I love this little neighborhood, and this is like the biggest city, and Quetzaltenango will be a little smaller, and it's at 3,000 higher feet of elevation. Guatemala City's already at 5,000 feet of elevation, so you can think about that. Guatemala City is as high as Denver, and then Quetzaltenango, or Shella, is actually at 8,000 feet, so it's 3,000 feet higher than Denver. So that's a real mountain town. That's higher than a lot of the mountain towns outside of Denver, too. It might be higher than all of them. Or the Rockies have to be higher than 8,000 in total, right? Oh no, the Leadville. That's where the Leadville Marathon is, right? That's like 10,000 feet. Yeah, that Leadville Marathon, that's 100 miles ultra-marathon or whatever that is, takes place in Leadville, Colorado, and that's 10,000 feet of elevation. But 8,000 is nothing to sneeze at. Plus, they have volcanoes here. So I think that's the next plan here. Go check out Quetzaltenango, see what the volcanoes look like, see if the town is any different than Guatemala City. Also, the best beer here, Cabro, is apparently from Shella. So I have to go check that out and see what it's like. Oh, so I don't do a lot of ride sharing usually. I have a bike or I have a car or I walk everywhere too. So I'm not used to using rideshare programs. But Uber is extremely convenient here in Guatemala, so I've been using it. But just yesterday, I had a driver who accepted, and then I was waiting 3 hours for him to pick me up, and he didn't answer. And I don't use them, so I didn't know what the consequences were for canceling a driver. I figured it would be okay after, an hour. I was like, well, I can't get in trouble for canceling a driver who was an hour late. But he was 14 minutes away and just decided to never come pick me up or cancel the drive. Drove around a bit and then drove southwest to Antigua for more than an hour. So I guess he was from there and didn't want to work today, but also didn't want to cancel the ride. Just thought that was funny because I was for 3 hours just walking around, checking my phone to see where the guy was at one point or another. And I just watched him drive around the city and then drive super far southwest to a totally different little town. But that has been my only negative experience with the rideshare here in Guatemala. Other than that, Uber has been really fast, extremely affordable. Like probably $4 every 30 minutes, $8 an hour, something like that. Pretty cheap ride. And the drivers have all been really nice. Very excited to speak in Spanish, even with my broken Spanish. So I've had a lot of good practice, like en route to a destination for 30 minutes, talking with a driver. Which is good because I don't get into long conversations. I'm usually too excited about buying the next food or watching the next episode of Letterkenny or whatever I'm doing, or making these shows. So I have to be in some longer form conversations, which I like because I do like to reestablish what little skill I have in Spanish so that it will be available when I do want to use it. So, gracias, me gusta Guatemala y este país es hermosa. Or our country's male. I'm not going to get the genders or conjugations right at any point while I'm living here. But everyone understands what I'm saying, so if you're worried about moving to a place like France or whatever that has conjugations, everybody knows what you're saying anyway, and they don't expect you to be good at their language if you're speaking it. So do the best you can. People will appreciate it a lot. That is my Ramble On first episode. Just stuff I was thinking about. So if you want to talk to me, I'm a bit of a rambler on all the socials or at gmail.com. If you talk to me, I'll probably talk to you back here. And I will see you on Wednesday to talk about some hygienic practices on the road. Have a good one.